Marina Webster, your host for Inspiring Author TV, the only show that inspires authors to write and gives them tips and hints on how to write and publish their books. And today we have a very interesting topic. We are going to talk about Japanese poetry Tanka. And here's our guest, Amelia Fielden.
Hello.
Welcome, Amelia.
Thank you.
She's a Tanka poet, enthusiast poet,
Oh, yes.
like she calls herself. She's also a professional Japanese translator. So, Amelia, can you tell us about your passion, the Tanka?
Oh, yes, my passion for Tanka. Well, it goes back a very long time. I did a Japanese honours degree at the Australian National University in Canberra, and I was specialising in Japanese literature in those days, reading a lot of Tanka in classical Japanese literature. In those days they were called waka, but it's the same thing. And skip forward many, many years after that, I was asked to translate a book of modern Japanese Tanka, contemporary Japanese Tanka. And it was so difficult to translate, but such an interesting challenge that after that I thought, I wonder what it would be like to write original Tanka in the Japanese form, but in English. And that's when I began, and that was back in the 1990s.
Wow. So, Amelia, can you explain us what's the difference between just normal poetry and Tanka?
Well, Tanka is a very short form of poetry. It's very concise, and rather than comparing it to what you say normal poetry, it's probably easier if I refer to haiku, because most people are aware that haiku is a Japanese 3-line form of poetry, very short form of poetry. But actually Tanka is much older than haiku. Tanka in Japan has a history of 1,300 years plus.
Wow.
And people are still writing in the same form today as they wrote 1,300 years ago. Haiku, by contrast, is only 400 years old.
Right.
And haiku was actually Tanka is a 5-line form of poetry compared to haiku 3-line. And haiku broke off from Tanka, took the first 3 lines and became a form of poetry in itself. So it's a very concise form of poetry, but it's also lyric poetry. It was originally created to be sung, so it's essentially a lyric, very short lyric. Yeah.
So what do you write about? It's like about love, relationship, or
well,
nature?
All of the above. In classical days, it was traditionally the subjects were set, and they were indeed love, longing, and loss, and nature. But in the contemporary world, and I'm talking about since the beginning of the 20th century, absolutely any topic is okay, any theme is okay. Japanese poets writing today in the classical Tanka form use very contemporary topics. They may be talking about breakdown of nuclear power plants, labor problems, aging problems, and also love and nature in all its forms. So it's wide open. That's its fascination, that there is no barrier to any topic, but the form is set.
Right. When you write Tanka, do you write it in English or you write in Japanese, then translate to English?
I write from the heart. I write in English, but I do belong to some Japanese Tanka societies, and to go to their workshops I have to write in Japanese. So every now and so often I have to produce some original work in Japanese, but that's much harder for me because my native language is English.
Right. So in English-speaking countries, many people interested in Tanka?
Well, yes, and increasingly so. There is a very large society in United States called the Tanka Society of America, and that has 1,000+ paid-up members. And that's, of course, there are many more people who are interested, but those are the ones who pay their dues. And in Australia, something like 500 in our Tanka Society. So it's small, it's a niche, but it's expanding. And people who are interested are very enthusiastic.
Wow, no, that's very interesting. But my question is how to publish Tanka book?
Well, it's no more difficult to publish Tanka books than it is to publish any form of poetry. But having said that, it's not easy to get poetry published.
Right.
There are some small independent publishers who specialise in poetry, and they will publish Tanka just as they will publish free verse. But always they're looking at the market, and the market for any form of poetry is not large. So you can really only publish with publishers who are prepared to do small runs, not thinking in the hundreds of thousands.
That's great. So all of these publishers you're talking about, they are conventional publishers.
Yes, but they're all small private publishers. They're independent. They're not part of a worldwide chain.
Right. Can you actually self-publish Tanka book?
Yes, of course you can. And you can also do on-demand publishing through the same people, in fact, will either publish for you or will do on-demand or self-publishing,
Yeah.
In Japan, I've had a large number of books of translation of Tanka published in Japan, and the system is somewhat different in Japan. The mainstream publishers will accept poetry and translation, but they expect the author to pay up front quite a large amount of money, and then they will recoup their own costs. So self-publishing has not got the same attitude in Japan as it does, say, in Australia. Even really famous poets in Japan expect to self-publish, that is to say, to go through a mainstream publisher and put up front quite a lot of money, which they then will probably recoup mostly through sales. Yeah.
Okay.
But the sales are done by the publisher, not by the author.
Right. And now, how do you market your book, and how you actually sell it?
Well, I give a number of workshops in Australia and in North America when I visit there, and people who attend the workshops are always eager for new books, so I can sell them there. And every book is launched. We have a book launch party or performances, and again they sell there. But with the book launches, the interesting thing is that one sells a certain number at the book launch, but often twice as many copies afterwards, because people tell their friends about this interesting book or the launch that they went to, or people who can't attend the launch contact me for the book. So it's quite a sort of slow ongoing process, and I have to say that I just it's just part of my life. I don't have a section of my life devoted to marketing. It just rolls on, so to speak.
Yeah. But you do a lot of workshops and seminars.
I do a lot of workshops and seminars, and
you sell through them.
Yes,
Yeah.
and festivals. I'm often asked to speak at festivals or to recite my poetry. I'm going next month to Tokyo, to the Tokyo International Poetry Festival as the Australian representative. And I've been asked to take a number of my books there, so all these various things.
In Japan, they really interested to buy books in English?
Well, yes, at the international level. This is an international festival, and there are people coming from about 60 countries in the world, and mainly English is the language they have in common.
Is there possibilities to sell Tanka books in the shops around Australia or US?
Some possibility. Some bookshops these days, unfortunately, don't even have a poetry section. In the USA, in cities like Seattle, where I visit quite regularly, there are in fact some dedicated poetry bookshops, and they're always eager to get extra material and different material.
Right.
But in Australia, unfortunately, the mainline bookshops are not very interested.
Not very interested. What about internet?
Yes, on the internet is good, and of course all the publishers that I use these days will market the books from the internet and through email requests and so on. So I don't think anybody expects to sell a great many in shops these days.
Right. On the internet, Are there any communities, Tanka communities, where people can go and like community, like Tanka forums? Or
Yes, indeed there is. There's one very good one which is controlled from America, and it's called Tanka Online. It's all one word, www.tankaonline, TANKAONLINE.com. And that is run by a webmistress called Jeannie Emmerich, who's a very good poet, a Tanka poet. And there are 6 of us on that forum who've contributed essays. The essays are permanently there. They're essays about things like the history of Tanka, how to write Tanka, etc. I'm the only Australian. There is a Japanese, a couple of Americans, a couple of Canadians. And in addition to those essays and to our what we call our Tanka bookshop, where on that site we have our own books displayed, and we also every 6 months change our page and offer a different set of Tanka. But in addition to that, we have a guest Tanka poet every 6 months, and their work is displayed. So that's the very best site. There are other sites you can look up if you just put in Tanka into a search engine, but that's the one that I would recommend most. And yes, books are sold from that site because both the guest poets and the core panel have their books on there.
Okay. Can you sell your books through Amazon or like online bookshops, Amazon?
Yes, that depends on the publishers. Some of the publishers put them on Amazon. Interestingly enough, I've done some translations which have been published in Japan, and one of the big publishers in Tokyo, Hokuseido, who published Kaleidoscope, the work of Terayama Shuji, which I translated and is quite popular in Japan, is selling well in Japan. I asked them to put it on Amazon, and they said they wouldn't because Amazon charges them too much.
Right. So not economical.
It's not economical. That is for a Japanese publisher, they said.
Right.
There is a Japanese Amazon as well as an English Amazon.
It's wonderful, Amelia. Really enjoyed talking to you. So just to finish our interview, can you actually read maybe a few lines from your favorite Tanka poems?
Oh, well, I don't know if they're my favorite, but I'll read...
Just maybe something really inspirational.
Well, I'll read you what's a short, we call it a sequence of 5 Tanka.
Yes.
And the sequence has a title, unlike individual Tanka, and they have to be vaguely related to each other. It's not like a narrative poem, it's not a story that develops, but it's on one theme. So I'll read you this one, which is called Sakura Sakura, being cherry blossoms.
Wow.
Red umbrellas under a blizzard of blossoms, the Japan we know from picture postcards. High noon in the silent garden of the Shogun, crimson camellia heads splash onto the moss. Collecting petals, canal waters flow beneath branches of cherry blossoms where a black Labrador waits. That silver glow of cherry blossoms at twilight, poem after poem opening in my heart. The full moon between flowered branches, a sudden shiver, love comes carrying a woolen jacket.
Beautiful.
That's a sample.
Really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Amelia.
My pleasure.
Can people actually contact you?
Oh yes, please. I have an email address which is anafielden@hotmail.com. All lowercase letters, all run together.
No problem. We put email on the bottom. So if anyone wants to contact Amelia, please contact you through this email, and she will be happy. She will be very happy to
Yes,
communicate with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you everyone for listening.